you all use them so often. There's no challenge. And I'm going to vamp for just a minute while we get some people in their seats. For those of you that don't know me, we do have many new people with us, and we're glad. We have many people that have been coming. We can pat gratitude to everyone. And maybe Jake Quaid has too, I'm not sure. And I'm not going to go back and check the attendance list, so just forget it. It's just not doing that. Okay, but although we do have a competition going, thank you to those of you that gave us your email addresses. Last month, in January when we did this, I went back and the students that had managed Saturday said, we got more email addresses than the volunteer on Thursday. And we told Martha Ginn this. And Martha Ginn is a former high school teacher, former high school English teacher, and she did not take lightly to that. And so Thursday I got here, and Martha was sitting there, and she was getting ready to do the thing, and she had gone through the list, and every person that was coming on Thursday, for whom we did not have an email address, she had written out their name on a card to hand to us, so she could get that and compete with the students. She showed up on Friday, and the students happened to visit with her at the same time, and so they had a little discussion about who had more. Now, she had a smaller group to deal with, and she had fewer TTU students to deal with, but she still got four or five now, so she's pretty proud of that. But they are eager to crow to her as soon as they can about how many more they got than she. They're up to 7 now, I heard. No, 10. I'm sorry. See, I'm corrected. Okay. On the screen, you can see, it's Come and See. It's April, and my name, for those of you that haven't met me before, I'm Marian Ann Montgomery. My father gave me a double name. I think he was the son of Polish immigrants. I think he knew I was going to end up in the South. I needed a double name. So I go by both. My mother's name is Marian, and I really prefer to have my name be Marian Ann, if you're calling me. But the students have to do Dr. Montgomery, which they think is easier. So every time we do Come and See, we sort of have a theme. When we were sitting here, when we set this up, we do it on a Wednesday, and we all sort of sit down for a few minutes and check, make sure everything's even, and we can see all the dresses, it's all working well. And I said, well, what are we going to do for next time? And I think it was Anna who popped out with road trip. I don't know, was it? I think it was Anna. Yeah, there, she's taking credit for it. And I went, okay, road trip, that'll be fun. But the more I thought about it, there was a lot of stuff to show you, and so you're going to see how almost everything up here relates to road trip this morning. And I'm, okay, Corey, I know you're there. I don't like that. Okay, that's what happens when I go up.
Try to go directly to your right.
I'll try that. You want to give me back to start?
Right now. There you go. There you go.
So, what's road trip? Where do we go on road trips? What's that have to do with us? Well, we go to road trips for honeymoons. We sometimes go for college. We have representatives of both of that. Sometimes vacation. Some of you are probably already thinking about vacation. Sometimes spring break. Sometimes business trips. Sometimes following an athletic team. Some people, I think, were in San Francisco for the Tech basketball team. Sometimes going to a conference. And also we go on road trips for fun. And I ran into this clip, which I hope will work. Oops. Do I push the center button? Oh, no.
Try going right one time.
No. Shall we use your other one?
Yes.
Was that the button?
I saw it play for a second.
Did you? This is a road trip to Iceland.
Oh, no.
I thought it looked like great fun. You put on a suit, you look like Gumby. You know, like Gumby's the guy. Isn't that like fun to you? That's fun. I think we have a whole group of people that don't like cold over here. What happened about Marian Thursday? She was this group that was like, no, it's too cold. Like, yeah, it looks like fun. Yeah, I think it looks like fun. because you put that wetsuit on, and I think you just sort of chill in the water. But for those of you that that's intimidating, we'll move on to the next image, hopefully. Oh, and now we can get it to work. We weren't sure that the video would work, so I also put these two stills in there. Just something to think about for road trips. Corey, can we make the lights, the back lights go down, please? So a little more seriousness. So as we prepare for today, the students go into the collection and they pick out what they think will be appropriate for this theme. And the theme was road trip, so they knew they were going to look first for going-away outfits. And they found this particular one that's on the screen and is here all the way on your right. And it's a brown outfit made of duvetine, which has a nap to it. It's a type of velvet with a tightly woven back. And the hat, which is here on the table, is also that. It was worn by Katie Lipscomb McAfee, who was married to John in 1921. Unfortunately, she died at the age of 27, just 2 years later in 1923. And so we don't really know a lot about her, but what a great outfit. Look at that wonderful embroidery that's on the jacket and the wonderful plush trim that's on it as well. In a few minutes, we'll have cameras to show you up close and personal the details on that particular garment.
What kind of fur is it?
It's a plush. We don't believe that it's a fur. We think it's a plush, and it was never stored in our fur vault. And by the way, while we have the word fur in our mouths, we don't take in fur any longer because we don't have an appropriate fur vault. And in fact, I don't think the students have ever even seen the inside of it. We have a closet that we keep as cold as we possibly can, but don't have the funding right now to get that to be cool enough, so we don't want to bring in anything else at this point. So then the next piece I want to show you is the going-away outfit that was worn by Maxine Weiss when she married Doug Blankenship. Maxine and Doug were both students at Texas Tech. And you can see on the screen pictures of them from their senior annual, which was a year after their wedding. And there's also the clipping from the newspapers.com from the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, which says, and I'm not going to read every wedding announcement to you today, I promise you. But this one, because it's so long ago, really is a charming, a little different. Miss Maxine Weiss, daughter of Mrs. Herman Weiss of Petersburg, became the bride of W.B. Blankenship, son of Mr. and Mrs. Wallace Blankenship of Levelland, in a double-ring ceremony read by Reverend Ollie Apple Friday evening at 6 o'clock in the home of the bride's mother. The altar was decorated with baskets of summer flowers. And it goes on to talk about the fact that she was given in marriage by her brother. She wore a powder blue crepe street-length dress with silver nail heads trimming the blouse, and she wore brown accessories and carried a deep red rose bouquet. For something old, she wore a cameo dinner ring belonging to Mrs. Jim Anderson. For something borrowed, she carried a lace handkerchief belonging to her mother. We don't get those details in wedding announcements anymore. I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, that's true.
Wedding announcements anymore.
Her Royce Blankenship, Dove's brother, was the best man, and her sister was maid of honor. Following the reception, which was held in the home of the bride's mother, the couple left for a wedding trip to Yellowstone National Park.
Oh.
But it was a little different then. It goes on. If you look over here, for traveling, the bride wore a stone blue two-piece suit with a white blouse and brown accessories. And here is that suit. We have it here on the stage as well. We didn't know, actually, when the students dressed this, we didn't know that there needed to be a white blouse underneath it, but I think it was just something that was on, because when you look at the way that collar goes on this suit, I think you just wouldn't have seen much of it underneath there. But they didn't know that because they had forgotten to tell me that this one was in the show, or I forgot to hear that this one was in the show. We got in here to set up on Wednesday, and they said, well, where does the Blankenship suit go? I'm like, what do you mean the Blankenship suit? We're not doing Blankenship today. We're doing that in July. No, we have it. It's a traveling suit. So I only found this newspaper after she already dressed it. So sorry that blouse isn't there. After they were home from their honeymoon trip, they were going to college here. And they were both seniors at Texas Technological College, where the bride was a member of the Phi Epsilon Omicron Home Economics Fraternity, and the bridegroom a member of the Society Social Club. Now, I don't usually take time to put someone on the screen that's not represented on the stage, but Doug Blankenship was the son of Wallace Blankenship, who founded the Wallace Theater chain, which was all across West Texas. And I don't know the exact number. I'm thinking it's 30 to 50 different small towns had Wallace theaters in them. And I did forget to mention that you might want to turn off your cell phones, but somebody's doing that now. And what's really kind of fun is that Allison Keeling has taken over from her father, who bought the Wallace Theater in Levelland, and she's been spearheading the preservation of it. She thought that it would be done by April 20th, but that didn't happen. It's going to be done later this summer. And the reason I'm particularly mentioning it is that we in our collection have some great things worn by the Blankenship women. And so I'm going to give a presentation in Levelland in July, and it's going to be called From Mary to Maxine, showing you the clothes of the Blankenship women. And some of you have already seen Maxine's here before, besides this one piece. And I'll tell you more about the dates for that toward the end. And then those of you that live in Caroline, and actually those of you that have known Mary Vines here, this is Mary Vines when she is a junior at McMurray College in Abilene. We do actually have her dress there on the left. We didn't bring it out today. It was made by her mother. Her mother was Mary Jane McGee Markham. And she moved to Levelland in 1925, which, Pat, I think that's about the time your parents started the dry goods store. Is that not right? About 1925?
26.
Okay, so Mary arrived just before your dad started the dry goods store, which was on the same side of the square as the Wallace Theater, right?
Yeah, so.
Okay. Mary's mother also joined the First Methodist Church, which the Grapp family has been a member of for many, many years. And Mary's father was involved in leadership there. Mrs. McComb made that wedding dress while Mary was off at school all summer. She only had 2 opportunities for fittings. And Mrs. McComb was also a school teacher who won a lot of awards for her service to Hockley County. Stories that I didn't know about Mary and her family. Here's Mary as, oh no, I did it again. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll stop pushing. There we go. Oh, well, we just have a fat finger today, don't we? Here's Mary on the left as the secretary for the junior class at McMurray, and there she is about the time of her wedding. The lavender dress that is the third one here from the right was made by Mary as her going away ensemble. It even has covered buttons in the same fabric. And I called her and I emailed her and I said, where did you go on your honeymoon? And she said, well, actually, the wedding was at 7 p.m. The reception was at my parents' home in Levelland, and as we were getting to the reception, we suddenly got tornado warnings. There was a tornado coming to Levelland from sundown, and so that added to the excitement. I'm surprised that that was happening in September, but I always think of tornadoes in the spring, but maybe the weather then was interesting too. And then after the late evening reception, she said, I wore my going away dress to Lubbock, where the honeymoon began, but I wore something more casual as the honeymoon continued to the mountains of New Mexico. So there you have Mary's little story there, and she's been a great supporter of the university. So the next piece is one that comes with a great story. It's different than a going away outfit. It is a going away outfit in a sense. This was worn by Joanna, Joanna Harcourt Healy. She put this suit on when she went on the train from New York to Poughkeepsie to start college at Vassar. Now, I don't remember what I wore to go to college. I know that it was casual because we were driving from Pennsylvania to Iowa, and it was not. Oh, I'm sorry. The top button, if you press the top button, you should be able to see at the top it should say silent. I keep getting spam calls from the 214 area code for some reason. They think I was in an accident 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure I wasn't. So anyway, Joanna wore this suit when she got on the train to go to Vassar College. Her mother was a graduate, but she was really interested in her MRS degree. Now, those of you that are too young to understand what that is, I don't know if you had this discussion with your parents, but I had it with mine, that I was not going to college for an MRS degree. I was going for a degree, and that was all there was to it. You better not come home with us the MRS thing go on, because we want you to get your degree so you can move forward. The truth of the matter was, got the bachelor's, got the master's, was one course away from the PhD, and said, you know, Mom, I'm engaged, it's June, the wedding's in September, I really don't think I want to go to Venice for the month of July, because I'm still going to have to do something else. And it was like, you're going, I'm paying for it, you can pay me back. So, yeah, that was the rule in our household, but in Joanna's household it was a little different. She was a very bright woman, but she fell head over heels in love, and she did get married, even though her mother had graduated from Vassar. Joanna did go back later on and got her PhD here at Texas Tech, where during the time that she was here, she also worked for the Southwest Collection, and she did collect some oral histories at that time. So as happens when things are pulled, I start to look for labels, try to figure out what might be the story behind the suit. Is there anything more? I mean, that's a great story, let alone. The fact that I found in the suit, there's a label from Milgram, and it turns out that that was related to this fashion designer, Sally Milgram. And I know that there are fashion history people in this classroom, fashion design people, who've probably never heard of Sally Milgram, right? Right, I hadn't either until I started down the road of reading about her. She was one of the handful of American designers on the American fashion scene in the 1920s and in the early 30s who devoted their careers to establishing an authentic American look despite the predominance of Paris fashion at that time. And so that's an interesting story about her. She understood the American preference for practicality and comfort in clothing, and she sought to create designs based on the Parisian style, but which also suited the American lifestyle. And she introduced individuality, comfort, practicality, and versatility through her designs for American women. So she predates the people that did the American sportswear look, which were Claire McCardell, Gilbert Adrian, and Elizabeth Hawkes, among others at that time. She continued in the development of her fashion, and she was a really brilliant entrepreneur. She was born in New York City to a family that had immigrated to New York from Austria a few years before her birth. And she was beautiful. She had tight Tahitian hair. She began her career as a model in some of the small shops down on 2nd Avenue. And that's where she met Milgram brothers, who had a shop there. She fell in love with the youngest Milgram brother, Charles, and they were married when she was just about 22. The family was in a custom suit business, and they were on the Lower East Side of New York, and she joined them shortly after World War I and began designing and adding to the whole idea of the style that they were able to produce. Here's a picture of her in one of her ads on the left, and then another ad from the business on the right. Her name is already here, Sally Milgram, and notice how they have the font for the particular business, because you're going to see that in a minute or two. She figured out, because if you think about where they are, they're in New York, they're not that far from Broadway. Broadway and all of the theaters at that time were very busy in the 20s. It was really before the advent of film, so there were very few other things to do besides go to the Broadway theater. Gee, that's too bad, you have to go to the Broadway theater. But actors at that time, I didn't realize, they were in a couple different theater productions at the same time. So they did not, at this point in the 20s, they didn't have time to go scout their clothes. That's when costume designers for theaters really first began to take hold. And so she got to know Flo Ziegfeld, and she designed for him. She got to work with Ethel Merman and Mary Pickford, and she had a great deal of quality to what she was designing at that time. So here's a picture of the label that's in our suit. You can see how the M here is like the M here. It's a little different, but you'll see a later ad for Milgram that morphs into that. The company became pretty successful with Sally doing what she was doing. So they moved once uptown, and then they moved again to this place. This is the new ad. It's like a giantess is moving their whole business uptown. And they went to 6 West 57th Street. For those of you that know New York, that's just like a block, or maybe on the same street as Bergdorf Goodman, which is just south of Central Park. So that's where they were located, as a specialty shop next to that giant department store. And they actually did have sort of a department store going with novelties and antiques and a number of other things. But wealthy women did make their way to her shop on the 3rd floor there, and they became one of the best-known custom and specialty stores in the city. So it's not too surprising that Joanna would have gone to that store to get her suit for going away. So Sally Milgram in the 20s, she really didn't, this is a 20s piece from her, and it doesn't have that flapper look. She wasn't really into that flapper look. She designed this thing which is very clingy for the female body, and that was designed in the 20s. It's from one of her ads. And so when the 30s came along, she had not gotten really into the tubular, straight, flat-chested look that was the flapper look. And so when the 30s came along, she was right there on the cusp, because in the 30s, more feminine curves come back into fashion. and she was right there prepared for that. She not only worked with some of the actresses, but she also then got to know the wealthy New York women. And this is Mrs. Frank Cyril Fisher, who is in one of her ads from the 30s with beautiful satin that we remember from the 30s and a bias cut evening gown. She also developed, because of the Depression, a secondary line called Sal Mill. I think it's a combination of Sally Milgram. That's what was called Sal Mill. Our suit does not have that label in it. It has only the Milgram label in it. Here's some more designs of hers from the 30s. There's our label again. And see how RM now matches this M in their ad from the 30s? So that really makes me feel it's not just the same name, it is the same company that Joanne bought her suit from to go off to college. She is one of the American press is still showing a lot of Parisian fashions, because in the 1920s, women go to Paris that have the money, they get their wardrobes, they come back, and then there are also designers in New York who are doing knockoffs of the Parisian fashions, and the knockoffs continue. Some of you might remember Jackie's pink suit that she wore to Dallas. And when I was at the Kennedy assassination site, I did research on that mainly because I wanted a free day in Paris that the museum would pay for. I actually got the Chanel people to agree to reproduce that suit. Just making a long story very short, when the National Archives would not work with us to let the people in Paris recreate the suit, they had the fabric, but they wanted the color, because Jackie asked for a specific color, they said. It was originally that model was designed in lavender, and that model is at the Louvre, but Jackie's is at the National Archives in Washington because of the stains that remain on it. But when we were trying to decide whether it was really a Chanel suit or not, you can tell by the numbers in the back of the label. And the National Archives did let me look, and the number that's in the back of that label was a huge indicator that it was not a Chanel suit. It was a knockoff made by Shady Mill out of New York. So knockoffs from Parisian models continued for a very long time. There's a little short deviation, sorry about that, but I think that's an interesting story. The Harpers did include her with other major designers. So Sally's is here on your left. It's next to Chanel and next to Hattie Carnegie. So she was hobnobbing with the top designers on the pages of America's fashion magazines. Another dress that she designed is this one on the left, which looks very much like one that some of you have seen before, which was worn by Olive Price Holden, the wife of Dr. Curry Holden, who founded this museum. Olive came to Lubbock with her husband, and she was working in the library before her untimely death from food poisoning, believe it or not. I'm looking at saying that very well. But we have this dress in our collection. I was like, it looks really, really, really like one that we have, but I haven't had a chance to look and see if Olive's, there's no record that Olive's had a tag in it, so it's probably not a Milgram, but it's maybe similar to that. Here is another ad here on the left, and Billie Burke was one of the major one of the major actresses, and this is a costume that she designed for her to wear in the, and it's mentioned in the ad that she's in the Florence Ziegfeld production of Annie Dear. So Sally's figured out a way to get the actresses to wear her clothes in the ads, and she's also promoting their production on Broadway. So it's a great, it works for everyone. And on the right is a playbill that you can again see the Milgram name, and this is where she dressed Francine Larimore in a gown and a coat for that particular production. So she was pretty savvy with her entrepreneur work. She also sometimes, especially, I mentioned that she dressed society women. This is Anita Loos, who I did not realize it was a woman who wrote the book Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. But she did, and she was a very tiny little woman, and it's mentioned that it was hard to design for her. But this is a lace evening gown that Sally designed for Anita that emphasizes her cuteness, but compensated for her diminutive size with a slightly filtered silhouette featuring the prevailing flapper style. Speaking of flappers, some of you know Jane Quaid, who's here with us today. Jane and Sandra Stevenson from Levelland and Martha Ginn from Lubbock have been working to back our 1920s beaded dresses. And the beaded dresses, as you might imagine, are very heavy. And so we don't want to hang them on a mannequin because they will rip. But Jane and others have been backing them with cotton, And so they stitch under the cotton, through the bead, through the chiffon, into the bead, and back down. So they're transferring the weight of the bead to the cotton, the new cotton fabric that we purchased, so that they can actually be shown. And that's an exhibit that will open about June 13th. June 13th. We're going to start on June 9th. So just to mention, just more through the flappers there. Sally did design for several of the First Ladies. She designed for Florence Harding and for Grace Coolidge, and obviously for Eleanor Roosevelt. She was tapped to design Eleanor Roosevelt's evening gown for her first inaugural, of her husband Franklin Roosevelt. And it's not surprising because actually she had been taking things to the White House for several years during the Harding and Coolidge administrations. The newspaper reported that Sally Milgram and her staff have gone to Washington to give a private fashion showing at the White House. And of course, dressing the First Lady was a very important thing since the fashion magazines did cover what the First Lady was wearing. She was approached to design this gown for her, and this is the one. You can see the gown here. You can see Ms. Roosevelt wearing it, and this is the one that is at the Smithsonian. I believe that there's also a later inauguration that's there as well. Sally designed this so that it had sleeves, or it could be worn sleeveless, which is kind of neat, I think. It was embroidered with leaf and flower design in gold thread, and it featured, as you can see, detachable sleeves. It also included an intricate belt buckle and shoulder clips made from rhinestone and moonstone. And the New York Times reported, Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt will wear a gown of silver lame in her favorite shade of blue at the inaugural ball. At the final fitting of the misty blue and silver brocade transformation gown on Tuesday, she was so pleased with it. That's a nice report from the New York Times. Well, Sally not only dressed Eleanor, she also dressed their daughter, Anna. And here is the dress that she designed for Anna Roosevelt doll. And the New York Times reported that both costumes were designed by Mrs. Sally Milgram, as well as other creations for the White House wardrobes of both mother and daughter, all made by union labor. I thought that was an interesting statement in the newspaper. The gown for Mrs. Doll was made of white antique brocade that the president's aunt had brought back with her from China. It was a simple dress, featured a slightly raised waistline that was accentuated by a sash train. And you can see it's a sash train because it continues down here. A sash train of 2 shades of red silk chiffon. Its V-neck and armholes were embroidered with red and white crystal beads, and I bet it was stunning on her. So the Milgram store was a specialty store that continued in, fat fingers, continued in New York from the 20s into the 60s, so it definitely was there when Joanna was buying her suit. Charles Milgram really owned the business, and Sally did a lot of the designing. We cannot say that everything that has a label from Milgram in it was designed by Sally, because she oversaw a lot of the design work, and I'm sure I would imagine didn't design every suit that was worn out of that store. They had so much success that they expanded to the Midwest with stores in Detroit, Cleveland, Columbus, Chicago, White Plains, New York, Miami, Palm Beach, and East Orange, New Jersey. The last one of their stores closed in 1990 in Cleveland. As we all know, that the retail industry has changed a lot. I do want to tell you a little bit more about Joanna. She went on, as I mentioned, to get her PhD, and she wrote a letter that was included in a book about important letters written in the 20th century. It was published at the end of the 20th century, and it was called Letters of the Century. And when the Salk vaccine for polio was announced on April 12th, 1955, 69 years ago today, that polio vaccine was announced. And then on the next day, Joanna sat down and wrote this letter to Dr. Salk. Not the least among the many honors a grateful world bestows upon you are the blessings of a million mothers to whom your discovery means freedom from a most tragic fear. When I realized that my young daughter and another child as yet unborn, who happens to be with us today, Nancy's here, my young child as yet unborn will never suffer from polio, I am more grateful than words can express to you and to all the others who have made this possible. Most sincerely, Joanna Shepherd. And I got through it without crying today. It was a challenge for me. Oh dear, thank you for pointing that out. There's the letter. There she is in her wedding dress. And then she went on to teach at Dunbar. And she died at a very young age from a cerebral hemorrhage, a cerebral aneurysm. And her students in the yearbook wrote this. The students of Dunbar wrote to say, we want to say goodbye to Joanna Sherbert, to honor her for what she was, and to thank her for what she asked us to be. To many of us, she was a good friend. We trusted her because when we confided in her, she kept our problems to herself. Occasionally, she gave advice, but more often, what she offered us was a new perspective, which helped us to see our situations more clearly. She also made us laugh. She had wonderful stories that she told in that New York accent that we all had fun trying to imitate. And in fact, some of the best jokes we took to share with others were her stories. A textbook written many years ago shared that our children are our immortality on earth. Joanna and her husband, Lynn, have 4 daughters of their own, but the Dunbar Shrug students and faculty are an additional kind of immortality for Joanna Sherbert. Great story about a woman who got her MRS degree, but went on to lots of other great things too. Moving on, I'm going to show you a picture of Lois Maynard McClure. Lois was here the other day. Some of you know her. She's been in the Lubbock community for years. Her daughters called me the other day and said, could you come over and take some things from the household? Mother saved everything, and we think there's some things you might like. So here's a picture of Lois with her husband Jay on their wedding day. And we have also with us her going away outfit, which is on the left. Here's a picture of Jay with Lois on the day that they went away. They had 3 children, and he was a golf professional when they married at Meadowbrook Municipal Golf Course, but he also was the men's and women's golf coach here at Texas Tech. And he coached them to the men's team, to the Texas Tech's first ever Southwest Conference Championship in 1958. I know there are some Texas people here and some Oklahoma people here. Just have to mention it, okay? I didn't go to school at all in Texas, so I can just play with all these schools and cheer for them at various times, which I do. And I'm sorry, I neglected to let you go up and show them the dresses on the right. So, Corey, could you please shift us to the camera, please? So Anna's going to take the camera, and she's going to get up close and personal with some of these outfits so that you don't have to later on do that. So start please with the 1920s, 21 outfit. Very straight looking. Corey, can we take the house lights down a little bit more so the screen's a little brighter? Thank you. Here you can see the wonderful detailed embroidery that's on that. And you can see if you look at these cuffs, it looks like it's more of a plush than a fur from that time period. And the duvetine is, I believe, is the fabric. So you can see that it has like a fuzzy feel to it. It was very good for blocking cold winter chills. And I love the buttons on this, the way they're asymmetrical and the square buttons. And that little loop that's there that you can see in the collar is so that she could put the collar higher, closer around your neck if it was really cold. Can you move on to the blanket ship piece? All right, this is the tile blue suit. You can see it has sort of a quasi-princess line seaming there. The white threads, we tried to remove them, but it's all part of the whole ensemble, so we didn't go too far with that. This is what she wore, a white blouse underneath. And very good, probably for heading to Yellowstone. And then Mary Markham Vines.
I love that.
Yeah, this is really beautiful, the way she used the satin and the buttons, and I think it's bound buttonholes on this and the pockets. The way that it's trussed, you can't really see if there's another matching button underneath that. That's there. It must have looked great on her petite figure, I would think. And then we have the suit. It's a plaid suit. This is the Milgram suit. Yeah, you couldn't see it in the lights, I'm sorry. It is plaid. And it also has pockets, which Anna's going to show you in a second. Some very nice decorative pockets that were very useful.
What's the material of your buttons?
It's just a mother of pearl button, I believe.
Lots of them.
Yeah, and you can see that there's also bound buttonholes on that. So quality, it's not just a machine-made buttonhole. Can you get in close to one of those buttonholes like yeah, that one? No, down further. Yeah, that one. You can see that that's a bound buttonhole. It's not just a zigzag around the edge. And you're going to see bound buttonholes on the Huffaker piece as well. While you're up there, and since we're running tight on time, would you go to the other side? And she's going to show you first the suit that we were just talking about that was worn by Lois McClure when she went off on her honeymoon to New Orleans with Jay. You saw that picture of them. She wore a scarf underneath it that doesn't survive. She was here the other day and she seemed to think the scarf with full was okay. And then to her left is a piece worn by Linda Mack Huffstetler, Linda Huffstetler Mack, when she married here in Lubbock, and we'll see pictures of her in a minute. And then to the left of that is the piece made by Charlotte Huffaker in her home economics class here at Texas Tech University. I even know the name of the class. And you can see on this, she also did bound buttonholes. This is an ensemble that has a matching sheath underneath that same fabric. It's a silk to peony, I think.
Is it orange or pink?
It's peach. Is that fair?
Yes.
It's peach, in my opinion. And then to the left of that is a paper dress printed with the Yellow Pages designs on it. We'll talk about that in a minute. For those of you that didn't know paper dresses existed, there's one. And we'll tell you a lot more about those in a minute. And then, can you show them the fabric? The other is a culottes outfit that was worn by Lucy Melcher, who was an interior designer here in Lubbock. And the fabric is really the sort of stickers that you would put on suitcases. And that's why it is included today in our sessions. Corey, could you please shift us back? So I'm going to move on to, good. I didn't see the back here. I'm moving on to Linda Huffstetler, who married into the Mack family. And I particularly love this picture. They were friends of Margaret's. Many of you know of Margaret's of Lubbock, the boutique that was here in downtown on Broadway. And that picture of the women, of Linda with her future mother-in-law and her mother, all set to walk across Broadway to the Broadway Church of Christ, where the wedding was held on September 4th in 1959. They dressed at Margaret's. And Linda was here. She said, yeah, Margaret was a friend. Well, she's a friend to a lot of people, but I think it's nice that you could get dressed there and not have to get into a car and muss everything up. And also, Linda did donate the other two dresses that are, we have so many white wedding dresses, we didn't take that one, but she donated the mother of the groom and the mother of the bride dresses to us as well. Here is a clipping from the Lubbock Avalanche newspaper showing Linda in her wedding dress on that day. And then here is her suit reported in the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. It reported just a day after, 2 days later, that the bride's traveling ensemble was a tile blue silk tweed suit, complemented with a fur collar that doesn't survive. And she wore matching shoes, bag, and a white hat. And she was a student, it was reported in the paper, at Abilene Christian College, where she was a member of the Gata Social Club, and she's going to attend Texas Tech this fall as a junior student, because her husband was also a junior at Texas Tech, according to the paper. And then here's the picture of her with Scott, just before they went off on their honeymoon to New Orleans. It was taken at the Lubbock Women's Club, and you can see her hat, her white hat there, and her wearing this suit with a bit of a fur collar to it. So then the next suit that is on stage is the one that was worn by Charlotte Huffaker. And it really is a stunning example of what was created in the classroom. It was the dressmaking, tailoring, and design class, which was number C+T332 at Texas Tech. And she said she only made a B grade on this suit. I'm not sure why. It was pretty outstanding. But there she is, getting ready to go off on her honeymoon. And their honeymoon, I think, was also taken in New Orleans. They were high school sweethearts from Tahoka. Here's some more casual pictures of them getting in the car. And that little young lady, she managed to get back into her wedding dress and her suit for a major anniversary that they celebrated. It was around Christmas. The wedding dress was sold at Hemphill Mills, and her mother embellished it with some seed beads, some seed pearls. But she was able to get into that dress, which is kind of a great thing to be able to do. I'm not quite there yet. I'm working on it. They lived, some of you might not know, but you've seen this house. They lived on 19th Street, 3117. And she did have a passion for gardening. I really don't know a lot about Charlotte. I know much more about her husband. They moved here to Lubbock when he became involved in the leadership at Texas Tech University. And they had a dying tree on their property, which was at the edge, it was actually on the property of their elderly neighbor. And they asked about replacing that tree. They said, we'll pay for the tree. And he said, no, I don't want to have to water a tree. And those of you that have lived in Lubbock a long time know what that means and why he might not want to do that. Well, they decided that you really needed to have that tree there, so they just moved the irrigation system over, planted the tree, and paid for the water themselves. The house is now owned by Scott and Kendra Burse, in case you happen to know them. But here's a picture of Charlotte and John. And he started out being really interested in the environment and wildlife management. And he decided he could do more for the environment if he specialized in ecological law, which is what he did. They graduated here from Texas Tech's law school and moved to Amarillo, where he had a practice. She raised the family. And he served for 3 years as a regent before resigning midway through his appointed term to take on the role of vice chancellor and general counsel of the Texas Tech University system in 2012. So you can imagine, with the things that were happening in athletics and other things, the things that John had to handle and that Charlotte, of course, listened to. But as is really typical, unfortunately, so much of the collection we have here, a lot more is known about him than about her. I know she was a gardener. She's also an excellent seamstress. She managed a household, she raised children, and she was involved in Texas Tech activities, but I don't know a lot about her beyond that, unfortunately. They've moved to Aurora, Colorado now. And then the next piece we have is from Kay Cadell, who was on faculty here at Tech. She purchased this yellow paper dress that we have on the stage when she went to the World's Fair in San Antonio in 1968. The picture on the right is the hemisphere at night. It was 92 acres that became all lit up like a gay fantasy land at night, including the 622-foot Tower of the Americas. And so it was quite a place to be in San Antonio. And she recalled that it was really a privilege to get to go down to that. Now the paper dress falls in line with a whole series of things from the late 60s. There's where I want to go. Paper dresses were very bright, and they also often had psychedelic and floral patterns on them. It was really something, it started out with Scott Paper Towels trying to promote a line of disposables. And they decided to make a dress out of this paper, which had already been used in the hospital industry for disposable clothes in some of the hospitals. So they'd already experimented with it. You can thank the paper dress, but you can think about this the next time you're at the doctor's and they put one of those gowns on. But in 1966, the Scott Paper Company came out with these dresses. And there were two patterns. One was monochrome, and this one that you're seeing on the screen right now. And then the other one was this great red paisley. And you could get the dresses in the post. You just had to send in like $1. And I will tell you, I did have that one. And I wore it in the 1960s. And I know exactly where it was when we packed my room to move to Texas. So it's not with me now. The books were more important, I guess. My husband's going to laugh about that, I'm sure. But here are those dresses with people actually wearing them also. And so it was something you could get for $1. Bought it, brought it home, and there's some other examples of that. So here's a Hallmark ad for these disposable paper goods, which is the same thing that the people in the Scott Paper people were doing with their disposable dresses, just promoting their disposable line of things. And then we also have, here's the ad for that dress that is with us today. And actually the neckline looks a little different. So this may be an alteration that Kay made. And you could buy it for $1. My guess is that she really attaches the story of it with her trip to San Antonio, that the White Pages had a booth there where you could buy them. And so that's what I'm thinking that happened. And the Yellow Pages have this booth. So for those of you that are younger, that don't know what the Yellow Pages
Wow.
Yellow Pages was like a phone book. It was the same size. It's actually fatter than the phone book usually, because every business was listed, but the businesses could also buy ads. And so those ads were, are we affecting the live stream with all of the chairs? Are we okay? You think we're okay? Okay, good. You didn't know we were live streaming this, did you? So the Yellow Pages, you could buy, you have a listing of your business, but if you really want to promote your business, you could buy an ad in the Yellow Pages, which is why they were so thick and so fat. And that's what they're reproducing here in this particular dress. Here's some more. The diaper pattern is on the left. It's about 1967. You can see the sort of diaper. That's the name of a weave, but it was just printed onto that paper. And then here's the camel suit. It's sort of a take on Warhol's paintings of camel suits, turned into this sort of conceptual art here. And the power of the throwaway dress as a vehicle for bold prints was really harnessed for a number of things. Political campaigns took it on. The Nixon campaign put a dress. And so, I mean, you can imagine how cheap that was to get all of the Nixonettes dressed for whatever event it was. And here you can see that the women actually wore it. Here's an ad from Kentucky Fried Chicken. Not sure about the innuendos of being a paper doll, and then the other innuendos of being a candy bar. But the candy wrapper dress really sort of fits in with the whole idea of this paper dress and sexual freedom that women were getting at that time. The Beatles inspired some paper dresses here, and I love those dresses on the right. Those abstract designs are just smashing. Some of the major designers in England did take this on as a big to-do. And then the Wadsworth Athenaeum, which is a museum in the Northeast, had a ball, and someone designed, the man's name is there, Tacitus Lucas. He designed these maxi paper dresses for that ball, that were worn to that ball. It helps to have lots of money.
How long were paper dresses a thing?
Well, I'm going to get to that. I'm glad you asked. Just a minute. I'll get to that in just a minute. Here's some more art pieces from the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum. This one is particularly interesting because it has sleeves and that. I'm not sure how you got into that. There must have been an opening in the back. All the others, though, you can see would have been a shift that you just pulled on over your head. And here are two more from the Victoria and Albert Museum. So paper dresses could be altered within minutes with scissors and Scotch tape. And it was much more fun than spending a night with a sewing basket. And there was really a reaction from the young women in the 60s to their mothers who were sewing all these dresses and things for them to wear, who had been making the dresses since they were children. So it was a real reaction to, let's just put on this paper thing and cut it up and make it what we want it to be. But also, going out in a dress that was blatantly easy to tear off posed an exciting way to underline the sexual politics of the time period. So how long did this go on? Well, that's a good question. Well, women started saying things like, well, can we combine the paper with something else to make it longer wearing? And they did. They put synthetic fibers like rayon, nylon, and polyester in them. And the composite fabrics could be refreshed by ironing on a cool setting or even washing, though they couldn't be washed more than once or twice. So for a brief time, if you remember the 60s, those of us that were alive then, it was like, we're going to be dressed like space people, space odysseys coming around, and we're gonna just wear paper things. We're not going to bother with clothes. Who wants to bother with a sewing machine? Some of us still do, but at that time it was, why bother with that? But the real thing was that people wanted cheap, fast fashion. And so some of the stores started creating cheap, fast fashion because they also figured out how to get to the Asian labor market where they could make things cheaply. And that's when you start seeing Kmart come in, you start seeing the malls come in with these cheaper things. And today, the only comparison I can make with it today is Rent the Runway. For Rent the Runway, for $100, you get 5 new dresses every month. That's cheap new fashion. Some of you know I've been doing that. This actually was a Rent the Runway dress at first, but it's mine now. And because I was losing almost 60 pounds since July of 23, it was great to go to Rent the Runway because I didn't have to hold on to things that didn't fit anymore. That's the closest thing I can think of today with that. But the political mood was changing, and the hippies were coming along, and the Back to Earth movement was coming along. And it was like, oh, let's do macrame, let's do hand things. And so we started moving into other areas where we do embroidery that becomes interesting on clothing. And that relates to the next road trip story I'm going to tell you, which relates to Nancy Johnson. This is the quintessential road trip, let me tell you. This woman went to the University of Maryland. She's from LA. Her dad had a jewelry wholesale business. She went to the University of Maryland for her master's. And she didn't feel like writing a thesis. And she decided to get in the car with her friend and drive across Europe to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, where she saw these embroidered pieces. and she wanted to buy them. And they wouldn't sell them to her unless she bought wholesale. So she thought, how hard can that be? You know, my dad's in the business, I can do this. So she ordered a giant order of these embroidered pieces. Then she had to get back to LA to figure out how to sell them. Now Nancy Johnson then took all of these hand-done things, done in Asia, hand embroidery in Pakistan, but then she went on to Chinese pieces and other Asian countries, and she incorporated it into her clothing line. She became such a busy and desired fashion line that she had a showroom at the Trade Mart in Dallas, she had a showroom in New York City, she had stores across the state of Texas, she had spaces in the department stores, Dillard's and others, across the state of Texas, and she had a boutique in Harrods of London. That's how busy it was. So some of you might not remember the name, but you'll remember the white blouses with the big lace collars from the 80s. That's Nancy Johnson. I had the opportunity to be the first one into her warehouse, the first museum curator, as she was disposing of this. And I came back with 70 pieces because she is an incredible saleswoman. She could sell ice cubes, Jessica. I'm convinced of it. And then she came to visit us a few weeks ago to sort of see the students have started dressing her clothes, so sort of seeing how they look, what needed to be tweaked, what needed to be added. And she brought another 25 pieces for us for the collection. So we now have 111 of Nancy Johnson's pieces, which will go on exhibit in October in 2 galleries where the watercolors are now. And she will be here to see them as well. One of the things Nancy did was that she would borrow from other eras. And so her tagline became the woman with a past, sort of like a double entendre. And that's a picture of Nancy in her younger years. She will be here on Thursday night, October 23rd, sitting here on the stage talking with me about how the whole business came to be. And it's a great story. You're going to want to hear that story. Leon Webers, who is a professor of costume design in the theater at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles, will be here on November 13th to talk about sort of the historic details that you see in Nancy's clothes. So those are 2 nights that you'll want to reserve. It'll be again like that Lisa Erlandson thing is that those of you that have RSVP'd for, send you an email, have to RSVP if you're on our email list. If you didn't get your email to us, the students will be upset that you didn't listen to them. But you can leave that with us, or you can email me on that card that you got today. My email's there. So moving on about road trips. When I think about road trips, I think about convertibles, and I think about how Grace Kelly into To Catch a Thief was wearing this and how it just flowed when she drove that car. Apparently she was really a terrible driver, which came out after she died in a car crash. So yeah, that's how that came out. And then how about Tippi Hedren in The Birds?
Beautiful.
And Susan Sarandon in Thelma and Louise. Scarves and convertibles seem to go together. So we have recently received a major collection of scarves designed by Vera Newman. Many of you who are of a certain age remember the Vera scarves, and in fact, just this morning I received an email with a picture of Vera's scarf worn by Joanna from her daughter Nancy, but it was too late to add it to the slide deck this morning. So who was Vera Newman? Well, Vera Newman was a prolific artist, fashion designer in New York, whose career spanned 5 decades, and some of you may have her artwork in your home, or you might have it in your drawers with your scarves. She was born in Stamford, Connecticut, and she was the daughter of Russian Jewish immigrants. Her mother was reading a book by Vera Basketstaff, and I would struggle to find that book to put with this slide, but I never could find it. It must be in Russian, so I couldn't find it to put. It wasn't on eBooks or Amazon. And she spent a lot of time outside. She was encouraged by her family to do that. She was fascinated by nature. And by rendering it, her father would give her 50 cents for every notebook that she filled with her artistic doodles. And he took her to the Metropolitan Museum of Art every Saturday, and he hired a sign painter to help teach her art. Tough life, but she got to do it. Yeah, that's the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in case you weren't sure what that was there on Fifth Avenue. I'm going to move on, not tell the story that goes with that. Vera wasn't just ahead of her time, but in a sense, she really set the stage for people like Martha Stewart and Tory Burch to follow her. She's known for her brightly colored florals, her playful animals, her sunbursts, her geometric designs of the 60s and 70s, And this is a painting by her. Here's another. And you can see how easily the one on the right can really be a scarf, and also the one on the left. She got to go to the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art. That's where she graduated, and that's where she went after high school. And then she moved on to another, the Trippenhagen School of Design, which is after graduation. Her first job was as an illustrator, and then as a textile designer on 7th Avenue in New York. And then after that, she was hired to do some children's murals. In the 40s, she met and married George Newman, who was from a family whose background was also textiles. And so George and Vera really became sort of the textiles power couple of New York City when they moved into a small studio apartment, and they decided to merge their professional lives by forming a company called Print Text. They built a small silkscreen printing press to fit on their dining room table, and it was just large enough for them to produce linen placemats, which were then cured in their kitchen oven. We know lots of embroiderers and quilters that start out small, and then they have to take over more space in the house. They soon were joined by their friend Frederick Warder Ham, who was a German immigrant and also from a textile background. He must have been a great salesman because he went to B. Altman, which was, oh, come on, get back here. There's the B. Altman department store in New York City. He went to them and secured an order for an entire run of their first order. And the entire run was printed on her little dining room table very quickly. They had outgrown that apartment, so they moved to another, and then another, and then another. During World War II, Vera found it very difficult to get the linen supplies that she wanted to use, so she went in search of alternatives. The discovery of several bolts of parachute silk in an army surplus store led to an aha moment, which led to the scarves. And the Vera scarves that she started with her designs on became popular immediately. They had to move again. They went to this building in Austinburg, New York. It was an 1810 house that was actually, the building was built with prisoner quarried Sing Sing marble. And they were able to make this into the place where they lived for a period of time, and they also had the Printex factory there. Her scarves are very popular. Marilyn Monroe is holding one of her scarves in the last sitting by Bert Stern. And I'm flipping through this quickly, but Marilyn's wearing that scarf over to the right. You can look it up on the internet. We have children in the room. She also was popular. You want to look it up on the internet, I'm sure. She also designed this jacket in the pulpit fabric, which was selected by Bess Truman for the White House. She used this fabric in the solarium upstairs, and on upholstery and on curtains up there. This is a picture on the left of the buyers from the department stores visiting the Printex plant in 1960. You can see that it was so popular, they were lined up to get in to place orders. And that's George and Vera in the design studio in that house. This is their living room at that house. Lots of modern furniture in amongst an 1810 house. This is a picture of the Printex plant, so you can see all of the designs, the natural designs, the leaves that she put together there. And then they decided in the 50s to move out to this home designed for them by Marcel Brewer, and it still exists. It's sold on 2020 for $4.2 million. And if you can see those steps in the back here, this is the main house in the front. And then this leads to a guest house back here. Kind of cool. This is what the interior looks like. And they looked out onto the Hudson. That looks like fun to me. Great and clean design. Here she is in her New York showroom, and then also at the table where she was designing. I love that her table's a little messy. I can relate to that, don't laugh. And here are some of the outfits that she designed from the 60s. They almost would have been perfect on some of those paper dresses. The business remained robust into the 60s. George died in 62, but the business continued, and she continued to work with Warner Home, and they continued the business. They sold it off. They stayed on as creative consultants, but it pretty much closed down in the late 60s. Some of you might have Vera Bradley things, and the people, when they were founding the Vera Bradley Company, chose the name Vera in honor of her because they both were into very interesting fabric designs. Here are some of the home goods items that she designed, And if any of this looks to you like that Finnish company Marian, they were contemporaries in the 60s. Marian was doing these big screened prints for interiors and also for home goods, and so they were very much contemporaries of each other. Here's Vera with some of those home good things. You can see the tablecloth here, and here she is again in her awesome work studio in '74. And then we do have some of her scarves here. So I love the geometrics of these and the way you can fold them. Now, we don't have time today because I'm not going to go into how you can tell when the scarf was made based on what it was, what the signature is. But these Vera signatures, there's one here, and you'll see them on the table, are sort of the second reiteration of her things. The earliest ones have these little tags on them, the hand rolled. They were made in Japan. The later ones have the Vera, just the Vera name on it. And then even later, she got to her ladybug. These are some Vera pieces, again, with the tag here. This is one that's circular, so there's no tag on that. And then here you can see her ladybird design. When Target decided to reintroduce some Vera scarves, they also made sure that they put that ladybug on it because it was a signature that she used. But her things were these great pieces of art. So some museums have taken them and framed this and put them on the wall. She really, looking at this, there's just so much light and cheerfulness and brilliance in her pieces. I can see why people would want to turn them into works of art. Oops, I skipped ahead. I'm sorry. There we are. Those are the Vera pieces that have been framed and beautiful. So then I'm getting on to our last piece, which was worn by Lucy Melcher. Lucy was born in New York City. Her mother died when she was just 9. And she was raised in a household and with her aunts that also spoke Spanish. She went to live with an aunt one part of the year and a different aunt another part of the year. She got to go to Hunter College, and then she worked at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York, and she became a real popular person there with the Spanish businessmen. The South American businessmen were coming up to do business in New York City. And they figured out that Lucy could speak Spanish and English, and these businessmen, many of whom had never been to the States before, had to take something home to their wives. They found out that they went to Saks and asked for Miss Lucy, that she would talk to them in Spanish and English and get them something that their wives would love. And so she cultivated this clientele, which really helped her later on in working with many, many families here in the Lubbock area. While she was there, she met Ensign Melcher, who was there studying at Columbia, and she came back to Texas with him when he came here came home to Texas. It's interesting how Texas men have a way of bringing Northeastern women to the state. I've heard that they are like bluebonnets, and the rest of us are like dandelions. We just can live anywhere, but they have to live in Texas. Just saying. 38 years later. Here's Lucy again. When she got to Lubbock, she started out as a bookkeeper at Cagle's Furniture Store. And Mr. Cagle saw that she had some flair, so he let her start doing some interior design. And she developed an incredible clientele of people in the city of Lubbock, where she did designs for them not only here, but at their homes in New Mexico. Some of them had homes in Florida and California. And she was such a friend that she would travel and go and be with them, and they enjoyed having her there. Her ideas were also even featured on some of the television and the newspaper ads here in Lubbock. She was so powerful as an interior designer that there's a special color that Sherwin-Williams Brothers had in the day. I couldn't find it when I asked for them. But there was a special blue called Lucy Blue. I think it was sort of light blue that she used so often in interiors that she had her own name here. So if we're looking at going away outfits, it seemed only fair to show you mine. There's the fabric. So there's mine. And there's my wedding dress. And we were married in my home church in Richmond, Pennsylvania. And the man in the middle there is George Beetham, my cousin, my favorite cousin. And some of you know that Come See was moved from March to today. And the reason George is up there is that George died a few months ago, and his memorial service is in Pennsylvania today. And I can't go because I'm here. I can't fly won't get me there in time. And I'm sorry to miss family. But he was a great photographer. He did newspaper photography and was newspaper reporter for a small newspaper. So he was great at getting in and getting the pictures. And I knew my groom was not going to tolerate long photo sessions. And George knew all the family members. So we were very fortunate to have those pictures because George did them. We left from Graham Park. My flowers are yellow roses for Texas and white tulips, which are some of my favorites. And we took the train to New York City, where we were given a penthouse room. Yeah, we were given a penthouse room. It was really funny. We were like, what? And then took the train on up to Newport, Rhode Island, where we spent the honeymoon, which was kind of fun. Anyway, moving on. So we've talked about cup towels before. We talked about feed sacks a lot, because we have probably the largest collection of feed sacks in a public institution in the country, with almost 6,000 pieces. These are ones that just came in recently. The day of the week towels. These are ones with little terrier dogs on them. This is Tuesday for ironing. Why is ironing for Tuesday? Because you don't want the clothes that you washed on Monday to mildew if you wait till Wednesday to do it. And Saturday, in this particular re-entry, it was about baking. These were given as a wedding gift to Lois when she married Jay McClure by his mother, who had made them. And so we brought them out because we have some other towel things to show you. The fabrics for feed sacks start out being white fabric. And the people that live in the rural community that have limited resources realize that the sack of flour, or the sack of sugar, or the sack of cotton, of chicken feed, is about the size of a pillowcase. There's enough fabric in there to make a lot of different things. And so they start doing that. Well, the manufacturers realize they're doing that, and they go, they're making lots of towels. Why don't we print our fabrics? Why don't we weave our fabrics with stripes so they can have them for their towels? And here are two that are in our collection by Amelia Johnson Sharp that have also days of the week on theirs. This is Saturday, and she's baking too, and she's also ironing on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pick the same ones again, but there you have a different version of that. So when Lois Bader's family said, would you come look at things, they showed me this quilt, which is a bow tie quilt. It's very much a utilitarian quilt that you would expect to find. But on the back of it, if you can look there, this is the back, and I'm sorry I can't turn around and show you. It says towel bag. You can see the stripes for the towels there. This is the first quilt to come into the museum's collection that has the bags completely on the back of it. It was made by Zora Texana Smith, who was born in 1874 in Bell County. She married James Anderson Blair in 1897, also in Bell County. They started their home there, had 2 daughters in Bell County, and then they tried to move across country to Dickens. And here she is as a young woman, and then later in her life with her children. The journey by covered wagon, I said everything had a relationship to a road trip. Well, Zora and her husband and 2 kids took a road trip in a covered wagon from Bell County, Texas to Dickens. And by the time they got here, all the land for homesteading that was available had been taken. So he worked as a well digger, setting up and servicing windmills to the farms and ranches, which was a very productive business, I'm sure. She went on to bear them 3 more children, and she was a fastidious homemaker who took great pride in her garden and her orchard, and she was a resourceful cook, and she also took in sewing for the public to help make ends meet. She was a devout member of the Church of Christ, following the axiom that idle hands are the devil's workshop. So she did lots of things, and she made lots of quilts. But what really helped her quilt making was when her daughter married into the Meters family that owned the local grocery store, because suddenly she had access to a ready supply, a reliable supply of flour sacks that could be used for quilts, cup towels, and clothing for her grandchildren. She died in the 50s.
Could you turn it back one page so I can get a picture of that?
Sure.
Please.
Sure. And we will show you when we show the quilts. We'll show you that back. We talked about this in my household. How can we show that quilt? It would be nice to just turn the whole thing for you, but we don't have a carousel that big on our stage to do that. Did you get what you need?
I got it.
Good. So moving on, this is the 5th of the 5 quilts given to us, made by Pat Connolly of the Midland area. Her husband, her widow, gave them to us. And what Pat does for us is show a lot of different things. But this quilt is also involved in a road trip. This is what she called Lone Star Blues, made in 2004. You can see the great swirling feather quilting that's there. And that's a picture of Pat, obviously. This quilt was juried into the 500 Traditional Quilts show that Carrie Breshingham and Nancy Prentice O'Brien held at the International Quilt Festival in Houston in the early 20s. I also have a quilt in there. It was the only time one of mine ever made it to Houston. But I'm certain that Pat took a road trip from Midland to Houston in order to see her quilt on exhibit at the International Quilt Study Center, at the International Quilt Festival. I'm sorry, those are two different places. What Pat gives us the chance to talk about is the rise of long arm quilting. Now, some of you will have a real affection for hand quilted quilts. When I was at one of my numerous opportunities at the doctor's office waiting for my partner to come out of anesthesia, I was putting binding on a quilt that I had made, and the nurse came by and she looked at my quilt and she said, all of mine are hand quilted. And I never think fast enough to say, and when was the last time you operated without anesthesia? And when was the last time you wanted us not to have penicillin? But Pat is a real example of what you can do with a long arm quilting machine. And if you think about the 19th century show that was just here a couple of months ago, you saw very straight line dresses at the beginning of the 19th century when we were all had to hand stitch everything, every piece of clothing that people wore, to all of the bustles and the tucks and things that you get at the end of the 19th century when the sewing machine comes into use.
Oh, yeah.
And they had those bustles, they had those tucks, because they could. First of all, fabric was cheaper because we had the mills that had been industrialized in New England, but we also had a sewing machine. And they could get those things done much faster with their sewing machine than they could by hand. Pat is showing us the exact same thing with her quilting. And we'll show you up close and personal in just a minute how tightly it is quilted, because she can. She didn't have to do it by hand. She could get it done quickly with the machine. And although I will admit that early on, the long armers weren't really into this, they were just sort of reproducing what hand quilting could do. They've taken it to a whole new level. And there's no way you can look at that now and not see that as art. And there's no way I could personally do it because I don't have the high hand coordination to do what Pat was able to do with hers. I'll show you that in just a minute. So another road trip, one that had to be created, was this, which was at Releasing QuiltCon in Arizona. And it's made by Sandra Beaver of Urbana, Ohio. Took second place in applique. And it's based on photographs of desert plant life at a Nevada botanical garden combined with the red rock formations of southern Utah. A woman in Ohio is reproducing something based on her trip to that's how she chose to quilt it all across that quilt. And she says the gritty quilting is reminiscent of observing the outdoor world through a window screen.
Yes.
Yes. Kind of creative. So then we come to a little more close to home, and last weekend was the Quilt Festival in Dimmitt. Some of you know Linda Fisher. If you don't, Linda is a woman who has taught many people in West Texas to quilt. She's very prolific. She's so prolific that she gave us 72 of her quilts. After her family had already picked the ones they wanted, we got 72, and then we had another 20 or 30 that we got to, don't know how that happened, it's okay, that we got to auction off to benefit the endowment for this division. So Linda and I took a road trip to Dimmitt last Friday ahead of the snow, and there's a great coffee shop in Dimmitt. If you are looking for a road trip, Dimmitt's an hour and 45 minutes away, and they also serve handmade milkshakes. Hers was strawberry with real Bluebell ice cream and real milk, not the kind that you get at McDonald's, but the kind that you really make by hand. And milkshakes are really part of my life with road trips. When I was 2 1/2, I was the little cherub being taken in the car by my grandparents and my parents to California from Pennsylvania. And I was promised a milkshake every day if I took a nap. I still love naps. My mother did fuss about how much weight she gained on that trip with those milkshakes. But Linda enjoyed her strawberry one, and we're going to show you some quilts that she made related to road trips. Here's one that's on the stand to your left, and it's called Postcards from Australia. It has some laminated stamps, some button pins, some patches with animals, and then you can see there's 3 kangaroos hopping across her quilt. Those are machine stitched that she put on there. And various fabrics, animals, and tropical plants are scattered across the quilt. They're machine stitched together. It's all machine done. And the label on the back says Postcards from Australia, 2012. She made it at that time to commemorate a trip that they had taken there. Some of you also, some of the needleworkers, I'm sure, have pieces that you've made because you bought it at a shop someplace on a road trip. Quilters do like to go to quilt shops. I can attest to that when you're out of town. This one is based on Linda's trip to Ireland, and she said that when she went to Ireland, she couldn't find a quilt shop. Now, I'm not sure if Charles steered her away. It's possible. Or she just really didn't see any when she was there. But people, this is her homage to Ireland, because she did buy some quilt books in Ireland and was able to then use the patterns to make this particular quilt. The back of it, though, has this really adorable little girl that says Ireland there in the Irish costume. And then she also did this great sort of postcard from Ireland. Here that is a little more postcard. So you can see it says Irish costume for this piece. And it's printed on fabric there. So I think if we could shift to the video camera, please, and Anna will go up and show us the pieces that we've just talked about. So you'll show us scarves and can you move the lights down a little bit off the garments? I got you. So she's going to start with some scarves, severe scarves. Can you get down and show them the name? I've arranged them all so you can see her signature. And she's also highlighting the fact that there are gloves up here. If you would like to come and touch anything, please just don the gloves. They're not party favors. We'd like you to leave them behind. But please go ahead and don them so that you can touch and move anything that you want. Just that nothing up here is a party favor to go home with. But we do have some graduates and students that are fashion design majors that do want to get up close and look at things. So that's why we have the gloves for everyone to use. Go to and I'll come join you at the bow tie. Okay, so now it's going to stop. So that is stipple quilted in curves. And then go to your right just a little bit for the feathers, please. Thank you. Now, if we had to do that by hand, I'm sure it wouldn't have been finished by now. But see the artistry of what she's doing? It's not just quilting, it's really quilting a line that's absolutely gorgeous. And she has 2 more quilts on exhibit in the small gallery that can show more of what she's been doing. And then when we look at this bow tie quilt, this is the bow ties here, 4 of them in a circle. It's unusual arrangement of them. It's very much a utilitarian quilting that she's using scraps to use it up. There's probably, but on the back of it, the woven sack. You can see the stripes. And I'm sorry you couldn't be in the room when I first saw this because the daughters were with me and they didn't show me one piece of the feet sack. The daughters have been showing me things and I have been saying no to a lot of things. And we got to this one, I was like, okay, we have bow ties. And then I turned it over and I got so excited because we just don't have another one like it that has all of those striped feet sacks on the back of it. And she's showing you that Friday is for cleaning, Thursday is for visiting, she has flowers in her hand. Wednesday is for sewing. So it's mending things that didn't come out of the wash quite right. Tuesday's for ironing, Monday's for laundry, and Sunday is supposed to be for church. Usually there's a steeple on it, but for some reason there isn't on that. Maybe it's for everyone coming over for family lunch. Can you show them the ironing one? This has been machine quilted by Linda. And Linda does all of her machine quilting on her standard home sewing machine. She does not have a long arm, and so she doesn't send them out. I send mine out. She does not. And she does have some that will be at the arts festival. I'm looking for the paper doll. So this slide. Can I get between you and thank you? I think. with her pretty Irish blue eyes and blonde hair.
Is that machine embroidery?
Yeah. I think that's a printed fabric. I don't think she drew that on. Okay, and then let's look at her illustrate. Make sure you show them that one. The kangaroos. And you might not have noticed the kangaroo postcard and the turtle. They're all, and the koalas. They're on there.
Marian Ann,
Yes, ma'am.
did Linda say anything about the unusual shape of this quilt?
Quilters, at the time she was making that, were doing some of, that was one of the new techniques to try. And so I think that's part, I don't think it really relates to the shape of Australia, but it might have related to the waves on the beaches. They may have spent some time there. I didn't ask that question. And actually, Linda is not really remembering a lot about, she's made so many quilts, it's hard to remember everything. She continues to give like a dozen a month or every other month to the Ronald McDonald House. So she's valiantly trying to sew through her stash. The things keep coming to her. People give her lots of things. But she has a real sense of an artistic sense that what I like about what Linda does, and you can see it in this quilt in particular, she's taken a very traditional pattern and she's twisted it to play with it and to make it do what she wants it to do. And she played with the colors from dark on the outside to lighter in the center. And so she combines both traditional quilting with sort of the contemporary artwork. And I think I can say, because I know who's in the room, I think that some of the contemporary quilt artists are a little miffed by her because she does both. And so they view her as more as a traditionalist. But I'm thrilled that we have so many great pieces from the end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century that were made here by a woman who taught a lot of people to quilt and who loved color. So we're thrilled to have her with us here. Okay, thank you for those images. Corey, I've moved you on, and so we're not running out of time. Are there other, could we have some house lights, please, or some other lights? Oh, that's right, I do have one on the screen, I forgot. Now it's commercial time. So, right now, the exhibitions that are up is the recent, in the small gallery, the recent quilt acquisition. So, some of you might remember that we had a major exhibition of our quilt collection in 2016, and since then people have given us things. They've given us so many things that we had to split the exhibition of recent acquisitions of quilts into two. We had one a few months ago that was 1830 to 1930, and now what's up is 1930 to 2025. And also in there, as I mentioned, are Pat Conley's, but you can contrast what Pat did with what Joyce Massey did. Hers is the first one that you walk into. Hers is all hand quilted, all hand stippled, beautifully done, and she does one a year, I think. She was the woman who won Best of Show at the State Fair of Texas for most of the 90s. Coming in June, probably on June 13th, I believe is the date that I have on there, will be beaded dresses and parasols. So Jane Quaid has been working since 2014 to back beaded dresses to show you. And we thought that since Jane was a little bit, she's been taking Social Security for a few years now, that maybe we should do an exhibition of the work that she's done. And so then Martha Ginn and Sandra Stevenson have also come together to try to get more things backed. But we don't really have enough to do the whole exhibition, so we have some really cool parasols. And we thought, what great idea to combine the two in that gallery, and that will be open to you by June the 13th. Also on exhibit right now is Threads of Tradition, the Lisa Erlandson collection of 18th and 19th century quilts. Lisa came to me a few years ago when I was in San Diego at the American Quilt Study Group Conference. I can distinctly remember where we were, what room we were in, what was going on, when she looked at me and she said, well, you know, my quilts are all coming to Tech, right? I didn't know that. Lisa has been a quilt appraiser, a quilt historian. She's been president of the American Quilt Study Group. She's from this area originally, and she wants to give her 450-piece quilt collection to the Museum of Texas Tech. So to celebrate and to announce that, we have put an exhibition of things, some 2/3 of which she's already donated, and the others are on loan because, as Lisa says, my quilts have to earn their keep. And so she uses them in lectures, and actually the ones that aren't coming to us yet are the ones that she really wants to do research about the families so that she knows more about the stories behind them. And And then on Thursday night, the 24th, Lisa will be here sitting on the stage with me. We're going to have a PowerPoint presentation of every quilt in that exhibition. So it'll be kind of a gallery talk, but you don't have to stand up, you can sit while she talks about why she chose each one of those quilts. We don't usually have a chance to hear a collector talk about how they build a collection. And Lisa, in her donation, will really enhance what we have from the 18th and 19th century. Well, why is that? Why are we weak in 19th century quilts? Because we weren't settled until 1890, 1900. And so much of what has come to us have been donations from people who lived in the area, who settled the area. Lisa has been able to buy on the national level, national auctions, and also every time we're at AQSG, her hands are usually doing this to bid on a quilt that's going up for auction. So we're lucky to have her be so interested in what we're doing here. And honestly, I take Lisa's donation as a huge compliment for what the students and I have been trying to do here, and the volunteers for the 11 years I've been here. The Lone Star Quilt Study Group is scheduled to meet the last Saturday of July here. Lisa will be back to talk about her collection. Marcia K. Lackey, who gave us the Mountain Mist collection of quilts, will talk about how those quilts came into her collection, what's important about them, why she collected them, and possibly Carolyn Miller from the McKinney area will join us. There is a fee, it's $45 to come that day, it's all day 10 to 4, and there will be an announcement about that via email. Then in the fall, Nancy Johnson's show opens in October, goes until April. She's coming on the 23rd, and Leon is coming in November 13th. And then in Levelland, I mentioned the Wallace Theater. I mentioned Doug Blankenship and Maxine, and that his father founded the Wallace Theaters, and that Allison has been restoring them, and restoring this particular one. They're doing a thing called a pop-up fashion. So they're going to borrow some of our mannequins and show some of the garments that were worn in Levelland, lent by some people in Levelland for that exhibition. And then they've asked me to talk on July 10th about those objects. And so maybe you're not interested in what Maxine wore, but maybe you want to sit in a room that's been restored and have dinner. That's the other thing that happens on that night. So you can buy a ticket, I think they're about $20 on their website, and come to that night if you want to do that. And then, as you know, I often will end with some cute things. Oh, I'm sorry. There it is. There's more information about that night. Tickets are available at wallacetheater.com. And then, come and see for next season. We don't know what they will be. We'll be deciding in July. Jay will still be here. Anna will be doing an internship in Montana. And Jay will be working on getting her internship. But we will have come and see here in October, and that is not a weekend of a home football game, so don't worry. You don't have to split your time. Always check that out. And then we have them planned again for January and March in 2026. So I like to find something cute. I'm sure most of you know Wilma Flintstone. She's not so happy. And then there's some lines now, which I thought was fun. You know, if you get a bed that rises up a little bit, you can snore. So we have time for one question. If anybody has a question, you'd like one or two questions. Are there any that made you down? You can turn it off. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the color of the Lucy Blue.
Yes.
Did you say that was by Sherwin Williams?